You wake up at first light, not from the rooster, from the cold. It creeps into the gaps between the boards, into your breath, into your joints. The fire in the hearth is almost gone. The chowder is cold. The bread is hard as stone. Nearby, the family, tired faces, empty bellies. The day has just begun, and the strength is already half used up. There's no food, only leftovers. A stale rye scrap, a bowl of cabbage water, a crumb of lard if you're lucky. To eat is to live. Not to eat is to endure. Because in your life, food is not a choice. It's not a taste, it's a struggle. You're a peasant. You have no kitchen, no cook, no time to reflect. Everything you can put in your mouth is the result of hard work, luck, or nature's seasonal offering. If you want to eat, you work. If you want to survive, you don't lose a grain. And if someone asks you what you ate yesterday, you say, the same as the day before, and the same as tomorrow, if you're lucky. Watch to the end and you'll find out what a day in the peasant kitchen of the Middle Ages really consisted of. No myths, no recipes, just porridge, bread, cabbage, and hunger, which never goes away, never. The hut wakes with the first gray light, but there is little light, more cold. It draws from below, from the dirt floor, from the unheated hearth. Wood is worth its weight in gold. The coals are still alive, but they are going out. On the table, there is nothing extra. No tablecloth, no dishes, just a wooden board, a piece of yesterday's bread, and a mug with more foam than drink. It's breakfast. It's not long. It's not warm. It's not festive. It's just there, and that's enough. Bread rye, dark with bran, sometimes with millet, beans, crushed bark, or even ash. Not for flavor, but for volume. It's baked 2 days ago, maybe even earlier. It's not cut with a knife. You break it with your hands, or with your teeth. It's tough, it's sour, it's saliva-inducing. The crumb is broken, the crust is like a stone, but it's the basis of everything. It's the main product of peasant life. Someone dips bread in a mug. There are elements of water and weak ale in there. It is not a drink, it is a liquid that can be drunk without risk. Well, water has long been untrustworthy. Wandering nuns and medicine women say that disease lives in it. So they drink weakly fermented beer, homemade, cloudy, warm, with yeast and herb residue. Children drink ale too, weakened, almost without degrees. They give it to them because water's dangerous. They give it because boiling water is an unaffordable luxury. It is boiled in a cauldron, fermented on straw, stored in leather burdocks. It is not alcohol, but calories. There is no milk. Even if peasants have a goat or a cow, they don't just drink milk. It is processed into cheese, into sourdough, into butter. A liter of milk is not breakfast. It's raw material. It's preserved. And more often than not, it's sold to buy salt, or to pay tax, or just to survive. Sources confirm, according to agrarian and church records of the 14th and 15th centuries, including inventories, monastery statutes, and tax reports, the morning ration of peasants consisted mainly of bread and ale. In England, France, Germanic principalities, and Scandinavia, bread accounted for up to 70% of daily calories. Small ale was safer than water, cheaper than wine, and often the only liquid source of energy. Eating in the morning is not a pleasure, it's an obligation. Eat bread and you're off to plow. If you don't eat it, you lose strength by noon. They won't offer you a second piece. Stocks are counted, one for the day, one for tomorrow, one in case someone gets sick. No one speaks at the table. Everyone knows that if there's still bread in the house, all is not lost. If the mug is not empty, winter has not taken it away. They eat in silence, quickly, with gratitude, not to God, but to the bread. Because in this world, God is far away, and the bread is here in their hand. This is how a peasant's day begins. Not with prayer, not with dawn, with bread, a slice of survival, a hard crust that is chewed, not because it tastes good, but because you can't do otherwise. And if you're hungry, someone else is hungry. Because in a medieval village, breakfast is not the start of the day. It's a chance to live it. The sun is just beginning to rise over the fields, but the work has already begun. The peasant doesn't eat at home. He takes food with him, wrapped in a cloth, clasped to his body with a belt, or hidden behind his sinew. This is not a meal. It is a pause between strokes of the hoe. In the knot is a piece of yesterday's bread. It is as hard as in the morning, but cold and dry with a cracked crust. They dip it either in their own saliva or in the water from the burdock. They eat it with one hand. No oil, no salt, no luxury, just the sour taste of rye sourdough and a dry crunch like gravel scraping. A handful of beans or peas to accompany the bread. Boiled the night before, cooled and wrapped in coarse cloth or bark. Sometimes just folded in a leather pouch. Beans boiled to mush but no spices. Just warmth, hearty heaviness, and an earthy flavor. If the beans aren't overcooked, they're chewed. If they are mashed, they lick them off their fingers in one movement without a word. Sometimes turnips, raw, dense, with earth. They don't wash them, just wipe them with a rag. They bite it like an apple. Tart, sharp, slightly rotten taste, but it fills the stomach. It gives you strength. It's not tasty, it's work. Sometimes turnips are cut in advance, sometimes they're just thrown whole in the bag. The main thing is not to spoil. Those who work in pairs share. Those who work alone eat quickly, away from other people's eyes. Food is a personal thing. That means it's vulnerable. In a world where an extra root is a cause for envy, even a slice of bread is held like a weapon. Tight, close to the body. According to medieval sources, English manorial records, German Hausbücher, French peasant chronicles, field breakfast was everywhere meager, cold, monotonous. It was dominated by rye, oat, or barley bread, legumes, most often beans and lentils, sometimes peas, seasonal root vegetables, turnips, rutabagas, carrots, later parsnips, sauerkraut in rare cases, simple porridge or leftovers of yesterday's chowder. Fire in the field is impossible. No time, no fuel. A boiler is a luxury. Everything eaten must be preserved without refrigeration, not sour, not broken, not requiring a spoon. They drink rarely, a little at a time. From a burden made from a turned stomach, from a hollow gourd, from a wooden flask. It's either warm water, murky and tasting of marshy earth, or weak homemade ale, sour, slightly carbonated, saved from a fermentation by herbs. Squatting, or on a rock, or in the ground. Nearby, crows, a dog. Peasants tired of talking. Food is not a reason to socialize. It's fuel. It's fast. No chewing. No flavor. No choice. Breakfast in the field is a pause that no one sees. It happens in the shade. Between the beds, between the plow and the aching back. You eat to go on. Not to be satiated, but just not to give up. Because in this world, no one asks if it tastes good. They ask, are you ready to pick up a shovel again? And if you're ready, it means you're still alive. And turnips will help again. At least until tonight. It's midday. The wind blows dust between the beds. My back can't bend anymore. My arms are shaking. It is time to eat, if there is anything to eat. At the side, in a hole between the boulders, a small fire smokes. Above it hangs a cauldron, dark, smoked, empty, with a soot that has not been rubbed off for 10 years. It smells the same. Smoke, cabbage, earth, sweat, and survival. Inside is not soup, not porridge, not broth. Inside is what you can gather and not regret. Water, murky, from a brook or yesterday's burdock. A few leaves of sauerkraut left in the cellar. A spoonful of barley or oat groats, if left over from fasting. Onion husks for bitterness. Grass for flavor. Turnips for weight. And if you're lucky, a strip of pork fat. Gray, thin, but fatty. It's like a holiday, like a vacation. Sour soup is not because it's spoiled. It's because there's no other flavor. Anything that can ferment is already fermented. Anything that's been in the pit for a month has an odor and flavor, and it's used to it. Because in the Middle Ages, sour isn't bad, it's edible. When the chowder boils, it's eaten quickly, uninvited. The pot isn't shared, it's open. You come, you scoop, you leave. One spoon is wooden, splintered, with a dent from an old knife. It's passed around. Sometimes they lick it. Sometimes they just sip from the pot. Whoever doesn't have a spoon drinks from the palm of his hand. Or he breaks off a piece of bread, dips it all the way through to the piercing dampness, and chews it until it gets warmer. Food is common, so is hunger. No one cooks for themselves here. Whoever brings water eats first. Whoever is silent gets the last sip. Sometimes someone adds grits. Sometimes someone just sits closer to get there in time. And nobody argues, because eating in the field is not a privilege. It's a line, no words. According to historical data from Le Ménager de Paris, village questionnaires and city regulations of the 14th century, field dishes were cooked on leftovers: cabbage, turnips, barley, water, simple legumes. Once in a while, lard or bone. Everything. No butter, no cream, no meat. The medieval cauldron worked without recipes. It used what didn't spoil. Sometimes the chowder is liquid, like grass and water. Sometimes it's as thick as clay. No one complains. Thick is more nourishing. Liquid means it's easier to swallow. Taste comes last. The main thing is that the stomach doesn't feel so empty. They sit on the ground, on a burdock, on a root, on a stump, in the shade if it's hot, by the fire if it's cold. Dogs near, sparrows underfoot. Silence is part of the flavor. Talking only starts when the cauldron is empty. And if there's not enough food, then there's no talking at all. Sour chowder in the field is not a meal. It's a respite from death. Nothing extra. Just water, bitterness, warmth, and a little salt. It's not for taste, it's for survival. And if there was any fat in the chowder today, it was a good day after all. And if there wasn't, nothing. Tomorrow it'll be the same, or worse. But the main thing is that it was, and that the fire burns again. Even if only on 3 branches and 2 coals. As long as the cauldron is boiling, you're not dead, and the rest is for later. When the sun rises to its zenith and the hoe and plow make his hands wobbly, the peasant has one chance to take a break, to return to the village, if only for an hour. If the field is close, if the weather is not fierce, if hunger has not blinded him, he turns home. The door of the hut creaks open. Inside there is half darkness, smoke from the hearth, the musty smell of damp straw and stale cabbage. Above the fire is a cauldron. It is not empty, it is refilled. It's the same from morning until evening, just water added, just a little less salt. There's just no more vegetables left. Inside is chowder, sour, watery, weak, but warm. That's the main thing. Cabbage if there's any left. Turnips, always. Millet or barley sometimes. A handful of wild herbs, nettle, ragwort, thyme. They're not for flavor, they're for hunger. Sometimes there's a speck of lard in the soup. It means someone in the family didn't finish yesterday, or found an old stock wrapped in linen under the floor, or someone gave it away, sacrificially or secretly. Bread is always on the table, but not in abundance. 1 brick, baked 3 days ago, hard, bran, cracked. It is chopped, not with a knife, but with a stone or an axe. They break it, they divide it. The children get half, old men get less. The one who plows the land gets more, but only if he's earned it. They see everything. They remember. Sitting, on a bench, squatting, on a haystack. The utensils are clay or wooden, sometimes from half a gourd, sometimes from a hollowed out piece of wood. 1 spoon is already wealth. Often they take turns. Lick it, pass it around. No questions asked, no disgust. Only with gratitude that there is at least something. Historical sources from monastic household books, village inventories and written instructions of headmen, 29th and 15th centuries, show that dinner in a peasant's house consisted of warm chowder, bread, and rarely dairy products. Meat on weekdays was an exception. Even in well-to-do households, it was cooked only on holidays or in case of illness. Vegetable products prevailed, with salt, dried herbs, and leftovers from the evening meal. No conversational bustle. Only the noise of the hearth, the clanking of wooden spoons, and the sound of breathing of those who have not yet lost their strength. Sometimes an old man coughs, sometimes the youngest moans. His stomach hurts. The cabbage is fermenting, but no one complains. Not because there's nothing to say, but because it's useless. Mother is the last one to eat, after making sure everyone has had their fill. Sometimes she finishes the leftovers from the bowls. Sometimes she doesn't eat at all. Sometimes she chews a crust of bread, staring into the void. In her gaze is the score. What's left? What can be put away? For dinner, for tomorrow, for hunger. And once the meal is done, no one lies down, no rest. The men go back to the field, teenagers to the corral, women to the water, to the hearth, to the children. Only the old man stays against the wall, if he can still sit. Dinner in the house is not a comfort, it's a respite. It's a mechanism, it's control. Not taste, not satiety, not conversation, just bread and chowder in strict silence. Because here, food is the rule, and rules are not broken. And if you've eaten, you're okay for now. Tomorrow is not promised, and today the cauldron is still boiling. That's enough. In a peasant's hut, where the air is heavy with smoke and the walls are silent with poverty, not everyone sits down to eat equally. Whoever is stronger eats first. Whoever is younger or older waits, not because custom dictates it, but because in the conditions of survival, priority is given to those who work. The old men are at the wall, those who have long been out of the field, out of the stable, out of the vegetable garden. Their hands are shaking, their backs are twisted, their vision is in smoke. They don't get a bowl. They're given what's left. The grit from the bottom of the cauldron, the crust of stale bread. Remnants of porridge scraped off the walls. All soft, all warmed, all chewed by time. Someone eats by himself slowly, a pinch at a time. Some eat with someone else's help. Sometimes the old man holds his spoon like a last sword and eats in silence, because there are no words for gratitude and no right to complain. Children are age appropriate. The younger ones are in your arms. They are given breasts, or water with honey if there's any left, or nettle decoction if they're sick. From the age of 3, bread, flatbread, boiled turnips, chowder strained through a cloth so you don't choke on it. Food, not nourishing, just filling, to keep from crying, so they don't stagger, so they don't fall. Older children are on an equal footing with adults, but only if they plow. If they carry water, if they can spin a millstone, then a slice of bread, a whole one. Sometimes a spoonful of porridge on top. Sometimes a greasy mark from someone's fingers. Historians, including Georges Duby, Peter Laslet, Carlo Cipolla, note that children in peasant families of the Middle Ages received a minimum of calories, especially in the first 5 years of life. In the Livonian monastic records for the 14th century, it is stated that children were given leftover bread, grated root vegetables, boiled water with nettles or dried mint. Old people were fed at the goodwill of the family. They were not entitled to food if there was no surplus, and yet the customs were not completely cruel. If there was plenty in the house, the children ate first. If someone was sick, they would bring him an infusion of rose hips, dried plums, old cheese. But this is rare. Most often, eating to children is an act of love, and love is a piece of bread hidden behind the sinew. Sometimes a mother gives her son a piece of bread. She pretends she's already eaten. Sometimes the grandmother warms the chowder twice because the grandson overslept and stayed hungry. Sometimes the child just sits and waits for someone to leave a crumb, for someone to notice, for something to fall off the table. Old people and children are not the center of the peasant's table. They are its edge, his shadow, its weakest area. They are not given what is best. They are given what they can swallow. But that's the concern. Not the quantity, but the fact that there is food. And if a child doesn't cry and an old man warms a flatbread in his hands, then no one will die today. And tomorrow, a new bill, a new pot, a new silence at the table, and all in a circle. As long as someone in the house is willing to share, there's a future in the house, even if it's on water and turnips. Evening in the village comes not with the clock, but with the shadows that lie across the field, with the fatigue that presses leadenly on the legs, with the hunger that no longer hides, and with the odor that pulls from the chimney, sour, herbal, warm. It's not an aroma, It's a signal. It's time. The hut is greeted by semi-darkness. There is little light, coals smoldering in the hearth. Above them is a cauldron. It stands on ashes, not on fire. Flames in the house are rare, a danger, an expense. And the smoldering cushion of straw, chips, and kizyak gives a steady heat, enough to keep it warm. Chowder's been brewing since morning, slowly with what we can find. Sauerkraut, a couple of turnip tubers, a pinch of grits, sometimes grain left over from yesterday's threshing, sometimes a peel, sometimes finely chopped herbs, nettle, peresnik, mint, yarrow. Everything gives flavor, and everything is food. No meat, no milk, no butter. These words are not food categories on weekdays, but a dream. Meat on holidays, butter if you have a cow. But most of the time, it's been traded for salt. Spices? No one even knows what they smell like. The only supplement is salt, if there's any left, and ash. It gives the chowder its bitterness and fleshiness. The cauldron is big, almost black, sooty with old cracks, smelling of coal and dung. It's the only one, and there's food in it for everyone. Old men, children, those who have just returned from the field. Whoever got there first got more, but it's one at a time. It's all from memory. Whoever deserves it gets it. Who came late, look for what's left by the walls. There aren't many spoons. Sometimes there's only one. They pass it around. They lick it. They wipe it with their sleeve. Sometimes they dip bread. If there's any left, you don't cut bread, you break it. They don't leave it, they hide it. It's kept as a memory. It's a symbol of home, dry, cracked, moldy on the edge. And still, it's the best thing for dinner. Kids first, but not much. Adults as they labor. Women after everyone else. Sometimes only when everyone has moved away from the hearth. Old people last, or nothing. If it's been a bad day, there's only chowder. No bread, no words. Historical sources, including English household books, French livres de compte, and North German village registers of the 13th and 15th centuries, show that the mainstay of a peasant family's dinner was a thick-cooked stew of cabbage, onions, legumes, and turnips. It was cooked in advance and slowly over smoldering coals to save fuel. In poorer regions, such as the Alps and Scandinavia, rye porridge or bread swollen in water was added to the meal. The house is quiet. It's not customary to talk over a meal, not because you can't, but because there's no time and no need. Everyone knows how much is left. Everyone counts in their minds. How much groats, how many herbs, how much water in the barrel. Everything is accounted for, even time. And when the spoons fall silent, the bowl's empty, and the fire under the cauldron almost goes out, at that moment comes not satiety, it's calm. No one is full, but no one is hungry. And that is the victory. The evening meal is not a reward. It's a finale. The hope that tomorrow there will be something to fuel the boiler, that the children won't wake up in pain, that the husband will be back in the field. It's chowder on ashes, warm, simple, uncluttered. But it's everything. Everything that's left of the day, of home, life. As long as it's boiling, the family lives. That's all there is to it. Meat in a peasant's home is not a meal. It is an event to be remembered. It's an occasion to be silent, to gather, and eat slowly, as if for the first time, often the last one for months. On weekdays, there is no bread. On weekdays, there's bread, turnips, cabbage, beans. But when the house smells of fat, when there is no steam in the boiler, but a real, thick, heavy spirit of meat, it means that something has happened. A wedding, birth, death, departure, return, harvest, slaughter. Each of these events can be an occasion, but it doesn't have to be. Because even if there are chickens, they don't get eaten. They lay eggs. Even if there's a piglet, it's kept. He is salt, meat, and fat all at once in the future. Maybe. Pork is rare. Slaughtering a pig is a week of preparation and a month of talk. The whole village knows. And jealous, because after the slaughter it's a feast. Fat dripping off your fingers. The cauldrons are boiling. The bowls are full. But even then, every bite counts. An ear for the children, kidneys for the mistress, the spatula for the father, lard for the stash. Chicken is more modest. It's eaten when one of the elders is sick. Or if she's not caring anymore, then soup for 3, or for 5, or for all, but with enough water to last. The chicken is boiled to the last vein. The bones are chewed. The skin is divided. Broth with cabbage is the main thing. The meat itself is just flavor, only memory. Game is rare, but it happens. A rabbit from a trap, a hare chased by a dog, a pheasant hit by a stick. That's luck and risk, because hunting is forbidden. The forest belongs to the Lord. And if they find out, there's a fine, or sticks, or worse. So the game is eaten quickly, secretly, without a word. Sometimes at night, no salt, just so it doesn't go to waste. Meat is divided by hierarchy, not by fairness, by power. Father first, sons next to him. Guest is honored. Mother is at the hearth. She often just licks the spoon or eats the gristle. Old people, and if there's any left. Children, what others don't want. Sometimes the mother cuts off her portion and nods to the child. Sometimes the old man gives it back. He says, I don't want it, and no one argues. Because meat is sacred, not in the religious sense, but in the bodily sense. It's life, it's fat, it's strength, it's a winter that can now be survived. According to sources of early 17th centuries, English Parker Rolls, French Coutumes Rurales, North German inventory books, peasants ate meat on average from 4 to 12 times a year. The most common was during the fall slaughter period, November, after the harvest. Leftovers, salted, dried, smoked, used in chowder drops. For flavor, not for satiety, as one text says. Frying is rare. On the hearth, no frying pans. Meat is boiled, slowly, in a common cauldron, with cabbage, with beans, with bread, salt if there's any left, spices never. And all evening there's a warm vapor over the house. People eat in silence, savoring, slowly. Even the children don't scream. Everyone realizes that tomorrow everything will be the same. But today it smells like meat. Meat is not about taste. Meat is about memory. It's about remembering it for a year, like an event, a miracle. A bone in the chowder is not a treat. It's a sign. The house is alive today. It's still holding on, which means it's worth keeping quiet. Eat slowly and hope it happens again, even in a month or winter. Winter is not cold. Winter is the silence in the barn, an empty corner in the cellar, the last handful of grits in the sack. It begins long before the snow, the moment when the mother first asks, how much salt do we have left? The answer to that question is the difference between life and starvation in March. Every family prepares in advance, not by calendar, by instinct, based on the experience of past winters, when one rotten root cost a disease and an undivided slice of bread cost the death of a child. Cabbage first. It's fermented in the fall. The whole family cuts it, collects it in a wooden barrel, pour salt over it, knead it with their hands. They add cumin if they have it. Sometimes carrots to make it sweeter. They put a stone on top, bent. It must be sour. The more sour it is, the longer it lasts. The hut is cool but not always dry. If the lid comes off, it's all gone. One fungus and it's a different winter. The herbs are gathered in the summer, in bundles tied with thread, dried under the roof. There's nettle, mint, St. John's wort, turnip, plantain, some of them for eating, others to heal, and others just to have something to eat when there is only boiling water left in February. Beans and peas are in the attic. They are laid out in sacks tied with strong thread, suspended from mice. They go through them with their hands. If a sack trembles, it means someone has got in. Beans are wealth. They keep the winter going. They swell in water. They become porridge. They become dinner. They become what they call food. Root vegetables are in holes, digging in the ground, deeper than the frost. They cover them with straw. They put turnips, rutabagas, sometimes carrots inside. They fill it with earth, clay, manure. It's not a hiding place. It's the heart of winter. If you make one mistake, the whole will freeze or rot. or ruined by a fox, or a rat, or a neighbor who got too hungry. The meat, if any, is salted. The pig is slaughtered in late fall, after the harvest. They boil the fat, rub salt on the meat, smoked over the hearth, on a bar, or poured in a tub in brine. They store it under the key in the cellar. Meat is an heirloom. It's not in a bowl. It's kept like a secret. Bread dried, often baked ahead. Rye, sourdough. It is cut like a brick, dried on a stone, and put into sacks. A scrap is as hard as wood, but if you dip it in the chowder, it softens and saves the day. Historical data confirm. In most European villages before the 15th century, there were no cellars in the modern sense. Products were stored in pits, hanging sacks, tubs, and clay vessels. Archaeologists find remains of sauerkraut, fish, beans, herbs, and charred roots. Signs of the struggle for preservation that lasted all winter. February and March are scary months. Everything that has been stockpiled runs out. The sun is still warm. There is no new harvest. It's not just hunger. It is a period that the peasants called pregnant death, when it seems that there is still food, but it has already run out. That's when they eat everything. Cleaning the walls of the barrels. They take out the dried crusts. They boil the bones a second time. They skim the fat off the hearth ceiling, and they wait, waiting for the first grass to sprout, the first sprout, the first chance to survive. Food storage is not cooking, it's a survival craft. Every drop of brine, every dried leaf, every stone in the cabbage barrel is part of a living organism called a winter home, and if it hasn't fallen apart by March, you win. Not because you're fed, but because you're still alive. And in the Middle Ages, that was more than enough. Water is a luxury, and it's a risk. In peasant Europe, drinking from a stream was like going to your grave. Even a well was not always safe. Rats could fall into it, sewage could leak in, or the bottom could simply sour. That's why they didn't drink real water. It was replaced, always, everyone. The main drink was weak ale. It was brewed at home in every courtyard and was not a joy, a necessity. Barely perceptible hops, fermented barley, sometimes oats, a cloudy sediment at the bottom. There's a film on the surface. The smell was heavy, but familiar. It wasn't intoxicating. It was sanitizing and thirst-relieving. Ale wasn't considered alcohol. It was given to children as young as 3, the sick, old people, pregnant women. It was part of the diet. It was like bread, a simple part of survival. Sometimes boiled with herbs, nettles, yarrow, wormwood, for better storage, or just because there wasn't enough malt. They drank ale in the morning instead of water, in the field to keep from falling, in the evening to fall asleep. They drank it with porridge, chowder, bread. It was sour, warm, thick, and safe, even if it smelled like swamp. Whey is the second liquid in the house. It was left over from cheese making. If a cow gave milk, you didn't drink it. It was beaten, fermented, boiled. You get sourdough, then cottage cheese. The rest was yellow, sour, odorous whey. It wasn't poured out. They drank it, or added to porridge, or left for later. Sometimes mixed with herbs, sometimes with a crumb of bread. For children, it was medicine. For adults, it was water they weren't afraid of. The third source of drink is herbal infusions. Not tea, that word hadn't yet reached the peasant's hut. Just decoction, just boiling water, and what they could gather in the summer. Nettles to have something to drink in the spring. Peppermint for pain. Wormwood for strength. St. John's wort for when someone close to you dies. The bundles were hung under the roof, knitted on ropes, sometimes in sacks, sometimes just in the attic. When there was no food, they just drank hot water with the herbs, to fill the stomach, to keep warm, to keep from falling. Historians note that in peasant life of the 13th and 15th centuries, up to 90% of all liquids consumed by adults and children were ale and concoctions. Water was mostly considered raw, dead, or dangerous. According to English ale assizes, German Haushaltsregeln, and Flemish parish records, home-brewed ale was brewed weekly, up to 20 liters per house. It was not stored, It fermented. It was drunk while it was fresh. Leftovers were given to livestock or thrown into a pot of cabbage. There were few drinking utensils. Mugs were wooden, sometimes made of stumps. Flasks made from dried gourds, sometimes leather burdocks, sometimes hands. The infusion was drunk from bowls, sometimes two of us, and none of it was enjoyed. There were no toasts, there were no glasses raised, there was only greedy gulping, sometimes a delayed exhalation, sometimes emptiness. Drinking in a medieval house is not a ritual, it's a matter of safety. It's a way to stay alive. Water kills, but warm ale, bitter, yeasty, heavy, saves. Nettle is not a flavor, it's hope. Whey is not acid, it's warmth. To drink is to live. And as long as there is a mug, as long as the concoction steams, as long as the fermenting ale sizzles, winter has not yet won, and that's all you need that day. A medieval peasant kitchen is not a kitchen. It's a corner with a hearth, a place where no meal is prepared, but leftovers are cooked to last until the next morning. There are no condiments, no choices, no favorite recipes. There is only the question, what's left? White bread is like a dream. It was baked with wheat flour, which the peasant hardly ever saw. Only if he worked on the estate and not for himself. Wheat was grown for sale, for the fair, for the monastery. In the hut, rye bread, black, gray, sourdough, mixed with bran, with ashes, with dust, sometimes with pea flour, sometimes with earth if it's been sifted badly. It's as hard as clay. You don't cut it, you stab it. You don't store it, you dry it and eat it like bread. White bread is a symbol of power, not food. Butter is rare. Milk is a source of cheese or whey. It was almost never drunk, and churned butter was too valuable to eat. If it is churned, it is stored in a rag, in a clay lid, in a pit. They use a drop at a time, only for sickness, only for childbirth, only on a holiday. On a normal day, the peasant's chowder is not butter, but the greasy flavor of sebaceous bones if you're lucky. Butter was cherished the way they cherish gold now. Honey was an impossibility. It was collected from the hives, but more often it was bought. One pot of honey could be worth a month's tax. It was used in mead, at weddings and cures. They gave it to children, a drop on the tongue. Sometimes it was rubbed on the lips of the dying, to make the taste of the last breath sweet. On weekdays, there was no sweetness. Even fruit was sour, rotten, dried. Sugar was considered a medicine, not a food. It was seen in a monastery or in dreams. Meat? In the peasant's mind, it's not steak. It's skin, cartilage, tendon, kidneys, head fat, boiled veins. Accidental trapped game that can only be eaten quickly and not told, because hunting is forbidden, the forest to the Lord. Pork was eaten once a year. If a pig was slaughtered, it was boiled whole. They boiled the bones. Legs were boiled. The broth was a blessing. The meat itself was sold. For salt, for soap, for a knife, spices. They were known by rumor. Pepper was for nobility, cloves for rituals, nutmeg for doctors. The peasant flavored his food with onion skins, cabbage brine, salt if he had it, sometimes ash, sometimes with fermented ale. Eggs were a luxury. Chickens were needed for eggs, but the eggs themselves were more often exchanged. If they were eaten, they were shared. 1 for 3. The yolk for the one who worked, the white for the children, milk for cheese, or to sell. Drinking milk as an adult is a waste, sometimes even a crime against the family. Historians Bray, Doobie, Hunter, and Hurley note that in the European village economy of the 13th to 15th centuries, the level of diversity in food was extremely low. According to the documents of village inventories, local accountants, parish books, and fair statutes, the average peasant consumed meat 5 to 10 times a year, dairy products, occasionally white bread, only at funerals or weddings. There was no choice. In the morning, we ate yesterday's bread. In the evening, cooked from leftovers. A holiday was a chowder with a bone, or a day when bread didn't break with your teeth. What is now available on the counter was then on the altar. White bread was a sign of power. Butter is a sign of wealth. honey is a sign of favor, and sweetness was the privilege of heaven. The peasant didn't dream of taste, he dreamed of satiety, to have something to eat, and to have something left over the next day. There was no to eat or not to eat. There was only eat or wait for spring. And that was enough to live, or at least not to die. Here's the conclusion, framed in the style of a documentary-style historical narrative, with an end-of-cycle atmosphere and an organic call to subscribe to the channel. A peasant's food is not cooking, it's instinct. It is counting how much is left, who to give first, how to stretch it until spring. You don't remember the taste. It's about remembering if anyone has lived since that day. Bread is like air. The ale is like water. Turnips are like a daily prayer. The medieval diet is not a story about appetite. It's a story of survival. A family gathered around a cauldron, a spoon being passed from hand to hand, a woman turning away from the fire so her children won't see she hasn't eaten. If you want to know how the people who built Europe really lived, subscribe to the channel. Here they talk not about castles, but about shovels, not about kings, but about those who ate bark. This is real history. No jewelry, no fantasy, just chowder, bread, and cold, the way it was.